Hi guys, you're welcome back to my channel. All right, so this is going to be a continuation video because in our previous video we drafted the pattern for this lovely gown. All right, so in this video we're going to look at each of the patterns. Okay, so I went ahead to transfer the pattern to the fabric. Now let's take a look at each of them. So this is the back pattern. Now I already transferred it to the fabric. Okay, and when we were drafting we included all our allowances. Okay, so this is it for the back. Now let's look at the front. So I went ahead to cut out the front. Now I only added 1/2 inch for the joining of the yoke, okay, which we cut out. Now when we're drafting we added 1/2 inch for joining of the sleeve, okay, and we added our sewing allowance of 2 inches. All right, so I went ahead to notch the waist length and the hip length. Okay, I also added 2 inches as my hemming allowance. We did all this in our pattern drafting video. Now this side is on fold. Okay, the front piece, the center front is on fold. All right, we have our allowance for joining of the sleeve included in the pattern. All right, so let's look at the yoke. Now this is the yoke. I went ahead to cut out 2 pieces, okay, and I added 1/2 inch round for joining to the main gown. Okay, so I have 2 pieces of it cut out on fold. All right, now we're going to be using one as our facing. So I went ahead to cut out a lace, okay, because if you take a look at the design you will see that the yoke has a lace on it. Okay, so I cut out 2 pieces of it. Now this is how we're going to be placing it on the yoke. So I'll go ahead and place one and I will place the second one. Okay, then I will just top stitch it round on the main fabric. Okay, I'll stitch it round on it and I'll trim off the excess. Okay, so there's what is called lace lamination. All right, so that's what I'm going to do to this. Okay, and I'll go ahead and just stitch it round to the African print. All right, now this style has pockets, so I have my pocket pieces cut out. Now I have a detailed video on how to join pockets, so I'll leave the link in description box. Now if you take a look at the yoke, you will see that it has a little bit of pleats. Okay, now this fabric is measuring 4.5 inches in width. Okay, now the actual length is 3 inches, so we're using 1/2 inch for joining and we're using 1 inch for hemming. Okay, so that's why it's 4.5 inches. So that's it. Now let's look at the sleeve. So I went ahead to cut out our sleeve. All right, so I cut 2 pieces, which is one for the left and the other for the right hand. Okay, now I cut out number 4. All right, if you remember when we were drafting I told us that we will be cutting out number 4. Okay, so I went ahead to cut out each of the layers. Okay, so I have number 2 cut out. Now for each of them I numbered it, okay, and I pinned it because they are not the same. All right, so here we have it. I have my number 2 cut out and number 3, okay, cut out as well. Now I'm yet to hem the lower part, okay, and I've not interlocked it at all. Now this is number 4, so we cut out the number 4 pattern separate. Okay, so this is it here. Now for all these flares I cut them using a 180 degrees. Okay, we did all this calculation in our pattern drafting video. Okay, now we will look at the joining process when it's time. Okay, so for now I'm going to go ahead and pin them. It's advisable you pin all the numbers on each of the flares because you will not want to mix this up. So we'll keep this aside and let's look at the joining process. Now we're starting with the back. So the first thing we're doing is to go ahead and stitch down on the zip allowance. So we're using a loose stitch to stitch from the neck depth all the way to the hip length, which is where our zip is stopping, and from there I will use a tight stitch all the way to the hem. It's our normal zip fixing method. Okay, so I'll do this, I'll press it open and I'll fix the zip. All right, and that will be it for the back. Okay, now let's look at the front. Okay, so this is the front. Now the major thing we're doing on the front is to go ahead and fix the yoke. Okay, but before we fix the yoke, I will first attach the lace to the yoke, like I had earlier explained. So we're attaching the lace to the yoke, and I'll trim off the excess. So at this point, I was still contemplating whether to use the two layers of the lace or one. Okay, but I ended up using two. All right, so I'll just go ahead and attach it to the African print, and I'll trim off the excess. Okay, so that's the first thing that I'm doing on the yoke. Okay, so I'll do this and I'll show us. Okay, then afterwards, I'll go ahead and attach our pleats to the front. All right, so here it is. I have just pleated around the space. Okay, so the pleat is the first thing you're attaching. Now, here is our yoke. I have attached the lace to the African print, so they are now one piece. Okay, so the next thing we're doing now is to go ahead and attach, is to go ahead and join the yoke to the main gown, or the main kaftan. All right, so, and here we have it. I have joined it. Now, when you're done joining, you need to notch so that that area can relax well. This is the wrong side. You can see how it's relaxing well. The secret is just to notch as you sew. Okay, so here we have it. Now I'll come in with this this accessory. Okay, I call it accessory. I don't know the official name for it. All right, so I'll just go ahead and stitch it at the edge of the pleats. Okay, so I'll stitch it. Now this accessory is only on the front. All right, so I'll go ahead and stitch it round just at the edge. Now when I'm done, so it's time for us to turn the neckline. So we're using the second piece of the yoke as our facing. Now I ironed it down just so that I can see the crease line. All right, so I'll align the center front of the yoke to the center of the facing. Now we're coming down by 3 inches. Okay, so that's the length of the slit. So we're coming down by 3 inches. All right, so now at the midpoint, I'll just mark 0.25 inch away from each of the sides. All right, and I will connect it down to our 3 inches slit length using a straight line. Okay, so it's like a slight V, because you don't want your slit opening to be so wide. Remember, is on your center front. Okay, your neckline. So I'll go ahead and use 0.5 inch to stitch around the neckline down to the 3 inches slit. Okay, now when I'm done, I will turn the neckline with the facing. So I'll go ahead and turn this, and I'll join the front and the back. Okay, on the shoulder using our 1/2 inch that we added. All right, and I'll also fix the zip. Then I'll show us what it looks like. Okay, then I'll also go ahead and attach the accessory on the neckline alone. All right, and here it is. I have it joined. Okay, I've turned the neckline. I also attached the accessory around the neckline. I only top stitched it. Okay, I top stitched the accessory on the neckline before I joined the shoulder. All right, like I explained for us earlier, the accessory is not running to the back. All right, so look at the back. It's only ended on the shoulder of the front. Okay, so this is it now. Now the next thing we need to look at is the sleeve. Okay, but before then, I'll go ahead and join. Now we added 2 inches sewing allowance, so I am only making use of 1 inch. So I will go and sew on 1 inch on the both sides, and I'll press it open. Okay, and we will look at the sleeve. Now here is the sleeve. Okay, so now we'll go ahead and mark out our lines. So the easier way to do this is just to align your pattern paper on the side of the sleeve. Okay, and just notch each of the steps or the tiers. Okay, so just notch it on this side, repeat the same thing on the other side, just like I'm doing. Okay, and we'll go ahead and connect it using a straight line. This is the easiest way. Okay, because our pattern already includes all our sewing allowance. All right, so just align it to the sides and notch them. Okay, you can also use your chalk to highlight your notches before you come in with your ruler to connect. Okay, so I have each of the points highlighted, okay, or marked. Now I'll come in with my ruler and I'll go ahead and connect each of the lines. Okay, remember that we're connecting number 2, okay, and number 3. I'm just repeating the exact thing that we have on the pattern, okay? But let's start with just number 2. All right, so I'll go and get the flare that we cut out. All right, so I have them numbered. I don't want to crack my head on which is which. All right, so this is number 2, and each of them is 2 pieces. So I'll go ahead and separate them so that we will make use of just one for this sleeve. Okay, so I will go ahead and notch the midpoint. Now the midpoint is important because you need to align the midpoint of the flare to the midpoint of the sleeve. All right, so I'll go ahead and pin this down. Okay, now I'll show us how it will be done using pins. All right, so I'll start by pinning the center of the flare to the center of the sleeve. Okay, so I'll go ahead and just pin this down and we'll proceed. All right, and here we have it for number 2. I have the flare pinned down. All right, now let's look at the number 3 flare. Okay, so I'll go ahead and connect the notches, all right, that we had earlier marked. So I'll connect that using a straight line. Okay, and this is it. I'm sorry if it looks faint. Okay, so I'll come in with the flare, and like I told us, I have it numbered and pinned. So I'll just take off, separate the pins, okay, and I'll make use of just one. All right, I'll go ahead and repin the number for the other sleeve. All right, and the first thing you're doing to the flare is to go ahead and notch the midpoint of the flare. All right, so I'll notch the midpoint of the flare, and we're placing it, the right side of the flare is facing the right side of the sleeve. Okay, so we're pinning on the wrong side of the flare. All right, so I'll go ahead and just pin this along the marked straight line. All right, and this is what we have. We're done. We have pinned down number 2 and number 3. Okay, now let's look at number 4. Okay, and number 4 is separate. So I'll come in with it and we'll go ahead and attach it. Okay, so this is it now. So we'll proceed to attach this, and as usual we need to indicate the midpoint. Okay, so the midpoint of the flare to the midpoint of the main sleeve. All right, and that's where we're going to begin our pins. Okay, so now remember that on the pattern we added 1/2 inch. Okay, so I'll go ahead and just pin this down on the 1/2 inch sewing allowance that we added. Okay, so and this will be it. The sleeve is actually very simple. The major part is in the drafting, which we broke down into the tiniest detail. Okay, and this is the sleeve. Is that easy? All right, so I'll take this to my sewing machine and I'm going to stitch down each of the tiers, okay, or each of the steps. So I'll stitch them down just like I pinned it. All right, I'll repeat the same thing on the second sleeve, and I will hem the edge. Remember we added 1 inch for hemming, so I'll hem each of the steps, okay, before I finish up. Okay, so I will do this now. For joining of the sides, it's advisable that you stitch down each of the tiers. Okay, so stitch each one down just like I am demonstrating before you finally close it up. All right, so that's the way to do that. So I'll go ahead and join the sleeve and attach it to the dress, and here it is. So like I told us in the beginning of the video, the sewing part is fast. All right, so this is it. You can see how everywhere the entire kaftan is laying flat, clean, well ironed. You can see the beautiful sleeve. Now I overlocked the rough edges before I stitched it down. Okay, so I went ahead to overlock the edges, even the hem, before I stitched it. All right, so this is it. I have it fully pressed. Now the So let's look at the back. So you can see the back. The accessory is not running to the back. All right. I needed to say that again. Okay. So you can see the neckline. So the slit length of 3 inches is perfect. You don't want it that deep, except if that's the style you want. Okay. Now this dress has pockets. Okay. So that's it. We've come to the end of the video. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.